annual Vibrant Living Expo and Culinary Showcase. I'm so excited to be back here again this year and to introduce our next presenter. Cherie Soria is founder and director of Living Light Culinary Arts Institute and co-owner with husband Dan Latterman of 3 other eco-friendly businesses. Often called the mother of gourmet raw cuisine, Cherie has taught students and world-famous chefs and instructors from around the world for over 16 years. Cherie is also the author of 3 books, including Angel Foods, Healthy Recipes for Heavenly Bodies, and the newly released Raw Food Revolution Diet. Feast, lose weight, gain energy, feel younger. Wow, that sounds good to me. Please give a warm welcome to Cherie Soria.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all so much. It's so great to see all the energy in this room. It's really exciting to me, and I'm really grateful that you chose me. It's really difficult to make those hard choices, isn't it? 4 fantastic venues going on simultaneously. And here's another hard choice. After this demo is over, our dear friend and chef Felix Schoner, who is flying here from Australia, did not make his plane. Oh, so the good news is I'm going to do a second demo right after this one, which will be Breakfasts of Champions, the Green Mornings. So in the first segment here, in the next 45 minutes, I'm going to be sharing with you how to make all of the comfort foods that you might be missing on a raw foods diet. One is old-fashioned cinnamon oatmeal. Another is crunchy granola with almond milk. And a third is date walnut scones, those beautiful comforting scones that you might be missing on Sunday morning. So I'll be making those in this session, and then in the next session I'm going to show you how to make a great green juice, which many people prefer for breakfast these days, or as a second breakfast, which is the way we do it here at Living Light. And we'll be talking about green smoothies, and I'm going to show you how to make a really fabulous green soup, all in just a few minutes in your blender using whatever you have on hand. We'll be talking about flavor dynamics, flavor balancing, and how flavors balance each other out. So it's a really good educational experience, as well as we'll leave you with some great recipes to prepare yourself at home. So I'm going to begin, as I said, with the comfort foods that we all may be missing, and those are the cereal foods. Soaked sprouted oatmeal, soaked sprouted buckwheat granola, and soaked and sprouted kamut scones. Not exactly the right titles, but you get the idea now what is in them. And we're going to begin with the granola. The first step to making anything that is sprouted, of course, is to give it life. You have to give it water in order to give it life. Otherwise, it's in its dormant state. So these are buckwheat groats. You can see that we've identified them. We always identify everything that we sprout so we know exactly how much we put in and when, and nobody gets confused about that. So when you soak buckwheat groats, make sure that you get the raw buckwheat groats. You can't use kasha. Kasha is a toasted buckwheat groat. You need raw, sproutable buckwheat groats. You soak them in water for around 8 to 10 hours, and then you rinse them and let them sprout for several hours more, maybe another 8 to 12 hours. Rinse them again, and then they're ready to use. They only need to have a tiny little sprout. We call it a tail because it looks like a little tail. It's very cute. And this is a great thing to bring your children into. Children love the magic of sprouting. It's a great way for them to get interested in living foods, to be able to watch them grow. So it's a great little job for them to do. And it's good to give children jobs because it makes them feel that you trust them for responsibility. So anyway, so these are our groats. They're already soaked and sprouted. And by the way, before we go any further, I want to introduce you to my assistant, Robin. Robin, come over here with me. Robin has been very helpful to me. Thank you, Robin. And we called each other to find out what colors we were wearing this morning. No, just kidding, we didn't, but it was perfect. So anyway, we're starting with these sprouted buckwheat groats, and we're going to put them in a bowl, and I know I have a nice big glass bowl right there, so we're going to start with that. And this is really, really easy to make. It doesn't take a lot of special equipment, although if you want them to be crunchy, you are going to need a dehydrator. That's about the only thing you really have to think about. So we're going to put those in a bowl, and this recipe, you have it in your recipe book. For those of you who already purchased the book, you can follow along with me if you want to make any notes, because I'm often giving variations of recipes. Those of you who aren't going to have your recipe book until you get home, because it is downloadable, for those of you who have 3-day passes, we'll be sending you a link and a password so that you can download all of the recipes for the entire festival. That's for everybody who's at the festival. They'll have that option, as well as those of you who are watching via the internet. And there are a few little bonus recipes in that booklet as well. So I'm starting out with a buckwheat granola, and then I'm going to add some date paste. Now, date paste is very easy to make. You can make up a batch of it and keep it in the refrigerator, and it will last for at least a week. And we would use this in place of something like honey. Now, honey is an animal product, and because we're a vegan school, we just don't eat honey or use honey at all. But of course you could use honey, but you're not going to get that crispiness that you would get from the date paste. So all you have to do for that is to soak your dates, put them in a food processor or a blender, and blend them until you get a nice thick paste. And as I said, they'll last in the refrigerator, so you can make a big batch and just keep it on hand. It's actually really good for spreading too, instead of jam. It's quite delicious as a nice little snack. Okay, so I'm adding that. Thank you very much, Robin. I'm also going to be adding some cinnamon, and I love cinnamon. You could forego the cinnamon if you want. You could add other kinds of seasonings, like how about chai spice? Wouldn't that be good? Or how about ginger? Dried ginger or fresh ginger could be really nice in your granola. Here I'm adding some soaked flax seeds, and the flax seeds will help to act as a binder for the granola, because I want it to be crunchy and I want it to kind of stick together and not be like grape nuts. If I didn't use any kind of binder, it would be more like grape nuts. It would fall apart more, but I really like it to kind of stick together like real granola. So there's my soaked flax, and again, you'll have these in your recipe book, so you'll know the exact measurements. All right, I'm also adding some soaked seeds. Now, the soaked seeds really add to the nutrient content of this dish. This is a very high-density nutrient dish because the buckwheat and all the different seeds are high in protein and calcium and zinc and other great nutrients. And I talk about that actually in my book, not Angel Foods, but the Raw Food Revolution Diet. These recipes are in there as well. And in there, you also have a nutrient, I guess you have a list of some of the more prominent nutrients in each recipe. So you can take a look at what those are. And definitely calcium and protein are high on that list. And so the next thing that I'm going to be adding is raisins. And instead of raisins, you could add cranberries, you could add currants. Those would be lovely. Any kind of dried fruit you want. If you add dried fruit, cut it up into little bite-sized pieces so that it's easy to get a perfect bite. A perfect bite would mean if you took your spoon into your cereal, you get some of everything, not just one big chunk of dried apricots, right? You want to have a little bit of everything. Here I'm adding some flaked coconut. Now, you don't have to use coconut. If you prefer not to use coconut, just omit it. You really don't have to substitute anything for the coconut. And now all I have to do is mix this up well. How easy is that? Pretty easy, isn't it? The thing that takes the longest, of course, is to soak the flax and the buckwheat and the seeds. But it's not difficult. It is something that you have to think ahead to do. Now, this is something that you might want to do maybe once a month and double or even quadruple the recipe. If you have a dehydrator, why not fill the whole dehydrator? Why would you want to have one or two trays when you could have a whole dehydrator full and make enough for a month? And you can also, after you spread them, you could cut them into squares or bars and have granola bars. So yeah, go. And that makes a great snack on the go for hiking or for traveling in your car or for taking to work, which is really nice so that you can have that snack, during when everybody else is having the donut break at work. You can have your granola bar break. In fact, if you really are one of those people who eats on the go, and I have to admit, even though it's not the healthiest thing to do, I often do it, you can grab a granola bar and eat that on the train or in the car on the way to work. Okay, so now all we have to do is we have to spread this out on a dehydrator tray, and your recipe packet will tell you the exact measurement, how much to put on this, but I'm just going to kind of cut to the chase here and just show you how easy it is to spread this out. This is not like spreading crackers. In fact, you don't want to flatten it out and spread it out flat, like in a condensed way like you would crackers, because you want it to be airy. If you spread it out flat like crackers, you're going to end up with granola bars, which is fine. But if you want it to be the kind of granola that will just go into your bowl and you don't have to break it apart, then break it apart to start with when it's easy to break apart, when it's wet. And there it is. That's just as simple as that. Pretty easy, wouldn't you say? Oh, well, let's see what it looks like once it's dehydrated. And here it is. Here's the granola. It really looks like crunchy granola that you would buy in the store. I don't know if you can hear the snap. Let's see. You hear that? Nope, that one didn't snap so well. Snap, snap. Okay, and of course you can serve it with almond milk or sesame milk or any kind of milk that you make. Does everybody here know how to make milk? Anybody not know how? Okay, there's a recipe for it in my book, Raw Food Revolution Diet, as well as in my other book, Angel Foods. And basically all you have to do is soak almonds, put them in the blender. Once they've soaked for 8 to 12 hours, put them in the blender with a little bit of water and some dates, vanilla, any kind of flavoring that you want. Blend it up and then pour it into a mesh bag, and we sell them down in the marketplace and for just a few dollars, and then squeeze out the milk. And the pulp will remain in the bag, and don't throw that pulp away, because that pulp is really excellent for making all kinds of things. In fact, today in the cafe, you'll see that we have tiramisu. And we use the pulp as the lady fingers layer in the tiramisu. So we also make our croutons and all kinds of things with that pulp. So it's valuable stuff. You don't want to throw it away. So let's put a few banana slices on our granola here, and that really finishes it off and makes a beautiful, I'll take that one too, thank you, and makes a beautiful, comforting breakfast cereal. Don't you think that's something your children would like? Good. Well, let's make sure that we give our children the kinds of foods that we know are going to help make them healthy. And let's extend that to the child within us as well. Okay, so we'll set that aside now. Thank you so much, Robin. And now I'm going to share with you how to make that comforting, warm oatmeal. And by the way, we're going to be serving some samples of all of these at the end of the program. So, get ready for that. Okay, so now I'm going to make the oatmeal. And for this, you will need a food processor. You could use it, you could do it in a blender if you don't have a food processor, but I think that for a raw food kitchen, you're going to want to have a juicer, a blender, a food processor, and a dehydrator. And it doesn't mean you have to start out with a big expense. You know, you don't have to buy the best. This is the best consumer, as far as I'm concerned, consumer machine. It's a Cuisinart. But you could pay $39 or $49 for an inexpensive food processor, and it would work just fine until you really feel like, okay, now I've saved up enough money, or I'm going to put this on my wish list, and I'm going to get the real deal, because this one's going to last me a lifetime. The same thing with a blender. Just about anything that you see us making here at Living Light, you could make in an inexpensive $15 or $20 blender. But we use a high-speed blender. Why? Because we're chefs. That's why. And because we can. And because once you have a good high-speed blender, it's kind of like sex. You know, the smaller blender is okay until you discover the real thing. And then, you know... and then nothing else will compare. Okay. I'm not sure I said what I meant to say, but anyway. Okay, so here we are. Moving right along. Oh, they can't believe I said that. And neither can I. Okay, so here we have our oatmeal, and it was soaked at 8:30 a.m. on the 21st. Is that today? No, it's for today, but it was soaked at 8:30 a.m. yesterday, I'm guessing. And what we do with the oats is we soak them for 8 to 12 hours, and then we rinse them well and fill it up with water and soak them for another 8 to 12 hours. You're not going to see a real sprout on these. Now, I want to make it clear that these are oat groats, just like we had buckwheat groats. They're oat groats, but they are not rolled oats. That means they're not steamed and flattened, and they're not oats in the sheath. So in other words, they don't have, they're actually grown, they're a hybridized grain. They're grown without the sheath so that they can be used in this way. So they're sproutable for cereal. That's the kind that you want to buy. And you can buy them through sunorganicfarms.com. And I know they're going to get thousands of orders now because we're all over the world right now. Everybody's hearing me say that. But these are really great. They're sproutable, and they don't have the outer sheath. So I'm going to put these in the food processor, just like so. Get all of them out of there. They are giving their lives to us, and I don't want to waste any of that. I'm going to honor them entirely. Okay. Well, we'll get the rest of those out after. Okay, so here we have our oats, and we also are going to put in about a half of an apple. Now, if you want to make a larger batch, you can. This is just for a little bit extra sweetener and some moisture. And I'm adding a pinch of salt because oatmeal could have just a pinch of salt to balance out the sweetness in the oatmeal. And I'm, of course, adding cinnamon because it's one of my favorite things to have in cereal. But again, you can omit the cereal. You can add any flavors you want or none at all. I'm also going to be adding some raisins, but I'm going to wait on the raisins until the last minute. And now I will blend this up. Excuse me, it's going to be a little bit noisy. And I'll have to scrape it down one time. Maybe more than once, we'll see. Whenever you're scraping down a food processor, you know, sometimes I see people going like this, and they put the spatula all the way down, and it gets caught on the blades. You really don't need to go beyond where the product is. There's no reason at all to put put it all the way down. Also, as you'll see here, your spatula is designed in such a way that it has one straight side, one sharp corner, one very soft corner, and then it goes back down to straight again. Well, the straight edge is what I want right now, see? So I just go like this, and that I only have to do it once. So lots of little tricks, you know, from a chef that you learn here when you're at the school, learning how to use your equipment efficiently. Okay, so we're going to let that run for a minute. And I'm going to put a little bit of water in this just to help it along. Beautiful. So what I was looking for is, you know, it started out very loosely, and then it started to get kind of more sluggish, and then it started to what I call crawl, and then it started to clump up and roll into itself. And when it starts to roll into itself, that tells me that it really is ready. It's starting to get that kind of gooiness that we all like in oatmeal. So that's ready now, and I'm going to add my raisins. And again, you could add any kind of sweet fruit, dried fruit you want to this. You could add dates. Chopped dates would be lovely. You could add, as I said before, you could add currants, which I really like, or cranberries. If it were the season for cranberries, you could add nuts. Lots of things that you could add. Now, I'm only going to run this with the raisins just for a few seconds because I want them to break up a tiny bit, but not a lot. Okay, and that's it. How easy was that? All right. So always take your S blade out first so that you don't try to pour out your mixture with the S-blade in, and also that you don't put your spatula in while the S-blade is in, because then what happens again is that it gets caught. Look at that. Doesn't that really look like oatmeal? Isn't that great? And look at how kind of sticky and lumpy it is. I love that. So we're going to put that in our cereal bowl. And this recipe only serves about, well, one big person or two smaller persons. That's going to be enough of that. And here we have our almond milk. You could use any kind of milk. You could even use a grain milk if you're allergic to nuts. All right, there's almond milk. And almonds are the queen of nuts. They are the most alkalizing of all the nuts. And here I'm going to just make a little strawberry fan by cutting straight down. And I kind of like being able to present my foods, even to myself, because I deserve my food to look beautiful. And make a little fan there. And there I have a beautiful, comforting oatmeal. Yeah. So really, really simple, easy to do, and something that you could actually make this, make a big batch of it and have it 3 mornings in a row, because it'll last about 3 days in the refrigerator. So that's that. And next I'm going to show you how to make those scones. You've been waiting for that, right? We all want breakfast scones. Now this recipe is something that can be used in many ways. Really, the basic recipe can be formed into all kinds of things. It can be formed into a loaf. It could be formed into pinwheels, like cinnamon rolls. In this case, we're going to make it the simplest way possible, and that will be as scones, the shapes of scones. So we're going to need our second blender bowl. That's coming along right now. So this is date walnut scones. Thank you so much. And there we go. All right, and again, we're using the S-blade. And I'm going to put my, great, fits good. Thank you for trying that for me. We have different pieces of equipment, and they don't always fit together when they're created with different serial numbers or sizes or whatever. I'm not very Good thing my husband, Dan Latterman, is an engineer and has a master's in computer science, or we wouldn't be doing things like streaming live on the internet, I can tell you that. Okay, so here we have sprouted kamut. And if you take a look at this, kamut is an ancient grain. I don't know, can you see that in your monitor? Okay, it's an ancient grain. It's easier to digest than our hybridized whole wheat that we get now, but it still has gluten. So if you are gluten intolerant, this is not the grain for you. Okay, buckwheat and oats would be fine as long as you don't have celiac. If you have celiac disease, you need to stay away from those simply because they may have been processed in the same plant as gluten-containing grains. But if you're just gluten intolerant, the oats and the buckwheat will be fine. And but the kamut, no. It still has gluten. It's still very high in gluten. Just a little bit easier to digest because it is an ancient grain. And because the ancient grain, it takes us time in our evolutionary process to be able to digest foods. And we just started hybridizing the wheat as we know it now in the last few hundred years. And it takes us longer to catch up than a few hundred years. So the kamut was way before that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to break the kamut up into smaller pieces. And we want it to be broken up into at least about 3 or 4 pieces each. Now, it's impossible to break each one up into 3 or 4 pieces. There's going to be a few that are going to not be touching the blades at all, and there are going to be others that are going to be, turned into mush. And that's okay. I mean, that's the way it is. So it has to be okay. But we're going to watch to make sure that the majority of those pieces are broken up into 3 or 4 pieces. And it doesn't take long to do that. And what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be rocking my food processor like this to keep everything moving at the same time. Now, you'll notice that I'm not banging it because I have a relationship with this. I don't want to harm it. I want it to last a long time. But I will be very gently kind of dancing with it. All right, so let's turn it on and get started. Okay. Oh, not even nearly. But this is not something you want to turn on and go to answer the phone or make a little call, right? This is something you want to stay with. Oh yeah, that's looking pretty good now. Maybe another minute. Perfect. Okay. Again, if you are really watching the food processor, you'll see that it starts out really, really loose, and then it starts to slow down, and then it starts to kind of clump, and you've got to stop there. You don't want to turn it into mush. This is not mush scones. Okay? You want your scones to be crumbly but hold together. You need to blend them enough or process them enough that you have some of it sticky and the gluten has developed to a certain degree, but you still have grains that show that when you break it open, helps it to be more crumbly like a baked pastry. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so now I'm going to put the other ingredients in, and that includes dates, because these are date walnut scones, right? So these are chopped, lightly chopped, and I'm putting them in, I'm keeping them kind of fluffy. I'm not putting them in one big clump. Now, if you don't want to use dates, you could use other kinds of dried fruits. Dates are pretty intensely sweet. So if you want to stay lower on the glycemic index, you could use figs. Mission figs would be great. Or you could use some fresh fruit if you preferred. They won't dehydrate quite the same way if you use fresh fruit as if you use dried fruit. The dried fruit helps them to dehydrate very quickly. I'm also using walnuts, and I don't want these walnuts to be chopped a lot, but I see that these are beautiful walnut halves. And so I'm at least going to cut the halves in half again, because I don't want these to be too large a pieces when they go through the food processor here. And I'll use my this is my shovel. I cannot go anywhere without one of these. It just works so well for so many different things. So got that. I'm adding, what do you think? Cinnamon. That's right, cinnamon. You can leave it out if you want. I don't know why you would, but you might. Little pinch of salt, always good for balance. And here I've even added just a pinch of nutmeg. And for those of you who are European, what would scones be without a little bit of nutmeg? You could add vanilla. Again, you could add chai. If this were the Christmas season, instead of walnuts and dates, you might add cranberries and pecans and some orange rind. That could be really nice. You could put in cherries instead of raisins or instead of dates. So there's a lot of different ways that you could vary this. Again, I'm not going to process it for very long because I want you to be able to see the walnuts. I want to be able to take a bite of the scones and have the dates go like this, right? When you bite into it, I want to feel that date in my mouth, not just a homogeneous scone. Okay, that's it. So that didn't take very long. All right, so now going to form these, and I'm going to put some gloves on. I have some gloves here. Thank you so much, Robin. Isn't she wonderful? Robin just graduated from the Gourmet Chef Certification course. Yes. And followed by Pastry Arts Unbaked. So she was one of the blessed souls who made tons of pastries in 3.5-day course. They made 6 mudslide pies, 6 key lime pies, 6 white chocolate raspberry cheesecakes, 6 chocolate chip mint pies, handmade truffles, lemon poppy seed cake. Yes, and what? And tiramisu. How can we forget? And they will be for sale in the cafe today, and you can buy little bites of them at the event this evening. If you want to just try all of them instead of having one, every meal, which you'd have to do by now. Okay, I took out the S blade, so now I can turn this over and just watch what I'm going to do here. All right, just like that. And you can see in the monitor, I think, how the dates are in pieces. And that's what we want. Remember I was talking about that? I want to be able to know that there are dates in there. Now I'm going to knead this just as if I were kneading bread. I'm developing the gluten in this. So even though it's not going to rise, it is an unleavened bread, it still has gluten, and I still want it to be sticky enough that when we cut into it, it holds together. And it doesn't, all the grains don't fall apart. So this is actually one of the things that I really missed about bread making. How many of you have been bread makers? Raise your hands. Lots of you. And isn't that a fun thing? Really get out your aggressions, can't you? Or make sure that you don't have any, because you get them out before they rise up. So here you can see that it's starting to stick together nicely now. And this is really good for the pecs, the pectoralis, right? So there's a lot of things that we do in the kitchen that really do help to develop our bodies. And it's important not to get lazy as we get older. You need to find ways to keep yourself healthy and in shape. I'm a martial artist. Been practicing martial arts for many years. I got my 3rd black belt in karate when I was 60 years old. I'm 62 now. 60. And by the way, we're going to have a panel this afternoon. I think, isn't it this afternoon? Secrets of Ageless Women. We've got some powerful women here this weekend, and they're going to tell you how they manage to balance family and work and what their secrets are for staying young and fit. And at 2 o'clock, I'm going to be talking about making your life extraordinary. I have an extraordinary life. I really do. I feel so blessed. I've been able to create a life where I feel fulfilled, and that's really important. And I'm going to talk about that and help you to also see what you can do to create a really extraordinary life, because you all have the potential to do that. Okay, so what you see here is I have shaped it now into a perfect round shape. You can make it as high or as flat as you want. I like it to be about an inch, no more than an inch. It could be as little as 3/4 of an inch if you want it to be. And then once you have it shaped, then you go ahead and cut it. Because it's on a Teflex sheet, this is a non-stick sheet that's made by Excalibur, you can cut it, but you need to cut it with something dull. You don't want to cut it with a knife. Otherwise, you'll cut right through your non-stick sheet. So I'm going to cut it right in half. First, I'm marking it to make sure that it's really in half, and then I'll just cut right through, like so. All right, then I'll give it a little turn, cut it in half again. Pretty easy to do. And I'm going to cut it into eighths. By the way, we have these for sale. All of these cereals are for sale in our cafe and in the grab and go. So if you haven't had breakfast yet, and the little sample is just too much of a teaser, you certainly can go down and have those every morning. One of the popular breakfast items in our cafe. And you can serve it, of course, with jam if you want. We're going to be serving it this morning to you with a little bit of raspberry jam, which is really nothing more than raspberries and dates blended together. So now these are separated. So when I dehydrate them, they will look like this. Let's see. I think we have some in here all ready to go for you. Indeed. Now this one was a little bit flatter. Somebody else made this one for me, but this is what they look like once they're done. Isn't that great? Yeah. So, of course, they change color. Everything does in the dehydrator. But the Excalibur dehydrator is absolutely the best. And by the way, it's one of the items that are in the raffle. So you could actually win an Excalibur dehydrator if you buy a raffle ticket. So we're going to put that away. We're going to serve those up to you with a little bit of jam. And we can do that now, actually. We can go ahead and serve those samples. And, yeah. Oh, we don't want to lose those, do we? Okay, so I have a few minutes for questions while we're serving up those samples.
I have an equipment question. I've been sitting here for 2 days watching you undo the Cuisinart top, but I do it with mine. I never separate those two pieces. That's part of the problem.
Okay, so we have a question about the Cuisinart, and she's asking why, when we put the Cuisinart together, do we separate this part of the top and this part here. And you're saying that yours comes, you don't take it off. Okay, and the reason that we get in the habit of that, and that's fine, the reason we get in the habit of that is we have some pieces of equipment that you have to take off first, and so it's just a habit for us to take this one off before we take this off. There's no reason why it has to be done. Any other questions? Okay. How long will the which keep? How long will almond milk keep in the refrigerator? We find that the almond milk will keep in the refrigerator for about 5 days. So it does separate. It'll separate after a few hours, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. In fact, even after it turns sour, it won't make you sick. It's just like yogurt. It has a different bacteria in it that actually is not harmful in any way. So even if it's sour, you can still put it in a smoothie or a blender, and it doesn't curdle like dairy milk. Okay, a question over here? Okay, the question has to do with making the scones. If you use buckwheat or oats to make the scones, will it still hold together? No, it'll crumble. It won't hold together the way your chewy scones that you're going to have a bite of right now will hold together. Another question? Yes, the question has to do with when you're soaking the seeds for the granola, can you soak them all at once, which is what I did. Yes, you can soak them all at once. Seeds are all pretty soft, and they don't take more than about 4 hours to soak. You can even really get away with soaking them a little bit less. The reason that we soak seeds is to get out the enzyme inhibitors so that they will sprout, and the enzyme inhibitors also have a bitter taste. So it removes the bitter taste, and it makes them more digestible and gives them life. Because now that they've sprouted, they're a living food. And yes, you can sprout them all together in one jar. Okay, if everybody could keep their voice down, and just enjoy the food, meditate, become one with it, really taste the flavors, then I can answer questions. Okay. Okay, so the other question has to do with the scones. I say in the recipe that you can use kamut or winter wheat. Yes, they both contain gluten. I just find that many people can more easily digest the kamut, and they have less problems with mucus in kind of clogged sinuses when they use kamut instead of wheat berries. Okay, another question in the back. Okay, here's a question about almond milk. When you're making almond milk, if you want it to be more full-bodied and you don't want to strain out the fiber, do you have to? No, you don't have to. You can use it that way in smoothies, and you would probably never notice it. You probably could even put it in your cereal that way without noticing it. If you were drinking it by itself, maybe with a cookie or something, you might prefer to have it strained. But there's no reason why you should have to strain it. Although I can tell you that we have found so many uses for the pulp that we almost have to make extra almond milk because the pulp is so valuable to us now. Have any of you tried our biscottis down in the store, the biscottis or biscotti? People are going like this. They are addictive, and they have to be made with the pulp. We have tried making them with almond flour. We've tried using other kinds of ingredients, and really the pulp, which is now defatted, is the only way that they get that nice, crisp, second-baked biscotti kind of texture.
I have found that biscotti are so good that I actually use cash for people who go watch my dog.
Okay, she says that she has found that she uses the biscottis for cash. For people who do favors for her, like watch her dogs. They are so valuable that she uses them as tender. The recipe is not in the book. No, but we will teach that recipe at our holiday entertaining class, which is the last culinary class of the year here at Living Light. You're all welcome to attend. It's a weekend of fabulous eating and entertaining foods for the holidays. And it's an observation course, so you can come for just the weekend. You don't have to have any prerequisites to take that class. And that's one of the things that we make in that class. We don't give out a lot of recipes that the students make in school because they pay for that. That's why. And then they learn how to make it properly, and we give them a lot of different variations and so forth.
One other question.
Okay.
Is anyone writing a book on just how to use all the different pulps?
Oh, now, this is an interesting question. Could somebody put together a book on how to use pulp? Now, we use all kinds of pulp in a lot of different ways. Our burgers in the cafe, we actually juice the carrots in order to get the pulp for the burgers. It gives the burgers body, and really, there's nothing else that can act quite in the same way. We make a meatless meat, burger kind of meat, and when we do that, we juice different kinds of root vegetables to get the juice, the strong flavors out, so that we can use the pulp for the base, for the bulk of the meat. We use different kinds of pulps in different ways. You can use the pulp from your juicer to make crackers. So those are some of the things that you learn when you come to the school. We don't have a book all about pulp. Okay, another question. Okay, here's the other question. Can you freeze that pulp? Absolutely, because quite often you don't have enough pulp when you make a batch of almond milk to make a batch of biscotti. So yes, have a container in your freezer just for the pulp, and then just keep adding to it until you get enough. So that's a really good thing to do. How are you liking the breakfast? All right, yes, I'm getting a lot of thumbs up. Good, good. And you feel comforted? Good. All right. Is there any gluten in the biscotti recipe? No. No gluten in the biscotti recipe.
Also, I think you should write that book about pulp nonfiction.
Aha. Pulp nonfiction? Is that what you... Pulp nonfiction. Okay, we've got the name of our next recipe book. Okay. Ann. I can't hear you, Ann. Will we have more samples? We only made enough samples for the first 50 people in the classroom, but all of these things are available in the cafe. So if you want to have any of them down there, you could get together and you could each buy one and then share them. That would be one way to do it. So I'm going to be finishing up now. I just want to announce that there are several great things going on today. As I said before, we have our raffle and our silent auction. I'm going to be doing a talk at 2 o'clock in the town hall about making your life extraordinary. I'd love to share with you all of the principles that I believe help to make anybody's life extraordinary. And I will also be emceeing this evening at Cotton Auditorium, and I'll be hosting the panel of women who are going to be sharing with you their secrets for ageless living. The other thing that I'm going to be doing is being right here in this room, sharing with you more great breakfast ideas for a green life, because we'll be sharing how to make soups, green smoothies, and green drinks. So stay tuned. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate sharing with you. Bye. Bye-bye. Okay, so now we'll get set up for demo 2.